Let's rise for our national anthem. Namaskar. The chief guest of the day, Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, Mr. Saurabh Kumar, Secretary at Ministry of External Affairs, Sri P.S. Karthikeyan, the High Commissioner of India to Fiji, dignitaries, invited guests of Indian Diaspora, Nisambala Vinaka. We are honored and privileged to have India's Minister of External Affairs, Padma Shri Dr. Jaishankar, with us today. Let me give a brief introduction. Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar hails from Tamil Nadu and had his early education from the Air Force School. He graduated in chemistry from St. Stephen's College at the University of Delhi. He pursued MA in Political Science, MPhil, and PhD in International Relations from Jawaharlal Nehru University. He speaks Russian, English, Tamil, Hindi, Japanese, and Hungarian. He is married to Mrs. Kyoko Jaishankar, and they have 2 sons and a daughter. Dr. Jaishankar joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1977, and during his diplomatic career spanning over 38 years, he served at different capacities in India and abroad, including as High Commissioner to Singapore and Ambassador to Czech Republic, China, and the US. He also served as a Foreign Secretary from 2015 to 2018 and is currently serving as the Minister of External Affairs. In 2019, he was conferred with Padma Shri, India's 4th highest civilian honor. Like many of you, I am also a great admirer of his inimitable style of articulation. He authored a book, The India Way, Strategies for an Uncertain World. So we are delighted to have you here among the Indian diaspora in Fiji. Without taking much time, let me now invite the High Commissioner of India to Fiji, His Excellency Sri P.S. Karthikeyan, to offer the welcome note. Sir.
Respected External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, Secretary East Ministry of External Affairs, Saurabh Kumar sir, colleagues from the Ministry of External Affairs, diaspora leaders, community members, and my dear friends, Namaskar and a very good evening to all of you. It is indeed my great honor and a privilege to welcome formally our beloved External Affairs Minister to Fiji once again, and to India House, Suva, for this historic occasion. The last 2 days have been quite momentous in the history of India-Fiji relations. As you all would know, we just started yesterday the 12th World Hindi Conference, the prestigious global conference on Hindi. It is jointly being hosted by the Government of India and Fiji. External Affairs Minister had inaugurated that jointly with the President of Fiji. And today, we undertook a very successful bilateral visit, the first ever bilateral visit of External Affairs Minister of India to Fiji. And here we are after unveiling the bust of Sardar Patel, one of the greatest leaders of modern India, whom we had the privilege here of having his bust. The World Hindi Conference that we are having currently in Nadi, it symbolizes the very deep cultural linkage, the unique cultural linkage, the very strong people-to-people ties that binds both these countries. It is this very strong people-to-people ties that provides the ballast, the foundation on which the entire superstructure of the modern and multifaceted development partnership is built with Fiji. So you can understand how important this link at the people-to-people level is. The celebration going on in Nadi right now, it's not just about language, it's not just about Hindi. It is about India-Fiji. It is about celebrating the journey of Hindi in Fiji. It is about celebrating the unique Indian cultural identity that has taken a new home in Fiji. All of you, the diaspora, are the integral part, or rather, the living part. You are the living bridge between India and Fiji. The government of India has taken great interest in the welfare of the diaspora, and over the last 8 years, especially, a lot of programs, a lot of initiatives, schemes have been announced. And even recently, just about a month back, we had the biggest global diaspora convention. And happy to say that it saw a good participation from Fiji. I would stop at this, and I would leave the External Affairs Minister to talk about rest of the things. I'm sure you're all looking forward to his remarks. Sir, once again, it's a great pleasure and honor to have you here. Thank you so much for taking out the time. I know how busy the schedule has been, but your presence here on this day, on this occasion in India House, it means a lot to us. Thank you once again on behalf of the entire Indian diaspora community here. And thank you also on behalf of the High Commission of India for gracing this occasion. I welcome you, sir, to please address the gathering and share your remarks. Thank you. Dhanyavad.
Ambassador Saurabh Kumar, Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, High Commissioner Karthikeyan, friends. I'm on my first visit to Fiji, not just as External Affairs Minister, it's my first visit ever. And after 2 days, I'm wondering why it took me so long. So it's really been a very, for me, a very interesting visit. A lot of things that I can relate to, a lot of things that I learned from being here. So what I'd like to do today is perhaps talk a little bit about my visit, because by doing so, I think you will get a sense of what is happening between India and Fiji. I'd also like to talk briefly to all of you about what is happening in India, because when I travel abroad and meet the Indian community, that's something that I always do. Now, as the High Commissioner told you, I'm here partly because a visit from an Indian foreign minister was overdue. But I'm also here because the Vishwa Hindi Sammelan is taking place right now in Nadi. It's something which probably would have happened a few years earlier, but for the COVID. But still, I must say from the meeting yesterday that we've really got a very fulsome cooperation from the government of Fiji, a very strong participation by the Fijian Indian community, and really a very good global response. I think we have Hindi scholars and pundits from more than, I think, 30 countries. So now I begin with the Vishwa Hindi Sammelan, because in many ways it's illustrative today of what India means to the world. The fact that there is virtually no country in the world without an Indian community of some size. The reality that this community spreading across the world has achieved its own successes, its own, I would say, milestones, and is today an enormous asset, both to India, to the country where they live, as well as to the world. Now, in an era of globalization, it is reasonable to expect that this will only increase with time, because I think all of you would readily appreciate that today in the world needs talent, world needs skills, world needs professionals, world needs mobility. Because where the demand is not where the demographics is. And how to balance that out today is one of the big developments in the global economy. But I also mention all this to you because at home, there has been enormous change. There's been great growth, but we have come through a very, very difficult time, like the entire world, dealing with the COVID. But we have come through stronger because I think we handled the COVID with a great deal of thought, with a very sound strategy, with capabilities which many doubted we had, with a degree of self assurance, which I think even surprised ourselves. So, today the picture really is of an India very much on a recovery path, quite confident about handling what is clearly a difficult global situation because the world has been impacted by 3 years of COVID, by a year of the Ukraine conflict and all the complications of that, by other stresses, some of which predated COVID, by debt, by trade disruptions, by climate change. So it's a messy world out there, but it's a world which and India is today looking at with a degree of self-assurance and a degree of self-confidence. And that is also the perspective which I bring to bear in relationship to Fiji. Now, at the Vishwa Hindi Sammelan yesterday, we were very honored by the presence of the President of Fiji at the inauguration, by the fact that the Prime Minister of Fiji hosted the welcome event in the evening, by the presence of a number of leading members of the cabinet, and as I said, by representatives of the Fijian Indian community itself. Today, I've had, I think, a fairly long and certainly very detailed discussion on the future of our relationship with Prime Minister Rabuka as well as his senior cabinet colleagues. And the message that I brought to him from Prime Minister Narendra Modi was that India's interests in the Indo-Pacific today are very substantial. Whether you look at it as economic or trade interests, whether you look at the diaspora, or whether you look at the politics and the security and the strategy, or the technology. So when we look at the Indo-Pacific, we certainly see Fiji as a very important partner, a partner with whom there is a historic link, with whom there is an established relationship. And the challenge for us as the two governments is how do we refresh this relationship? How do we make it more up to date? How do we address the issues which may have arisen, especially in the last 3 years? Because there's no country in the world which can say the last 3 years has not been transformational for them. Transformational both in a challenging sense and in a sense of discovering new capabilities. So our meeting today spent a lot of time addressing how to expand our development partnership. From the side of Prime Minister Rabuka, I certainly heard very clearly and loudly how much the Fijian Indian community and their contributions are valued. How keen the Fijian government is today in actually upgrading our relationship and intensify cooperation. So we discussed a number of areas. I think they range from health and education to sustainability to development partnership to business to investment to issues pertaining to the sugarcane industry. I mean, nothing which would come as a surprise to you, but I would certainly say the intent was to have a very open talk about what we could do for each other and with each other. And I leave with a sense of a agenda in an outline. I got a clear picture of where Fiji wants to go, what are their priorities, where they think India can be helpful. And my task going back after reporting to Prime Minister Modi is really to fashion an agenda that how do I take this relationship forward? How do we, where do we invest our resources and energies? What is it we prioritize? Where is it that our capabilities can be useful? And our own experiences with different countries really working together can make a very substantial difference. They can make a substantial difference in terms of projects. They can make a big difference in terms of capabilities, exchange of experiences, training. So it's a fairly sort of, I would say, hopeful, optimistic picture. But then still, I would say, looking at the future, a somewhat unformed picture that I'm sharing with you at this point of time. I, of course, in all of this, took advantage to see as much of Fiji as I could. I attended the parliament briefly. I was actually witness to a speech in Hindi being given by a member of parliament. I yesterday visited the Sri Siva Subramaniya Swami Kovil. I went to the gallery today, saw the Girmit gallery, which we have supported. And I would have wished I had more time and perhaps been able to travel to a few more places. But certainly, for someone who's here on a visit for the first time, I can say that I leave with a good sense of the state of this society, the state of the community, the state of our relationship, and that is really why I came. Now, if I can switch gears and speak a little bit about what is happening in India. As I said, for everybody in the world, 2020, 2021, 2022 have been extraordinarily difficult years. Because when they called COVID a once-in-a-century pandemic, believe me, they really made it. The last time the world saw anything like this was during the Spanish flu, which was almost exactly 100 years ago. Now, some of you may know this. Perhaps, at that time of the Spanish flu, records were not kept so well. But it's generally agreed that probably the geography where the maximum casualties happened was the Indian subcontinent. When COVID happened, there was a very strong expectation that something along these lines would be seen again. That in very, very serious levels, concerns were expressed. How would a country like India, with its level of income, its level of development, the inadequacies of its health system, the shortcomings of its medical world, how will we deal with a challenge like this? Now, if you fast forward 3 years, actually what we saw during this period was a country, because of leadership decisions, was able to create COVID centers literally by the tens of thousands, was able to manufacture ventilators, PPEs, masks, was able to produce vaccines, not just for itself, but for the world, was able to invent vaccines during this period, was able to get 2.5 billion shots in the arm and give you a digital certificate, which not many countries did initially. And not many countries, by the way, got shots in the arm also with the kind of frequency and coverage that they should have. So that's one part of it, that we came through the, I would say, the public health challenge. Not without cost, not without challenges, not without losses, because there would be nobody in India who's not in some way been impacted personally by the COVID. But there's another part of this which is less known, and it's important that all of you appreciate, which is that especially during the lockdown and the economic consequences that followed, there's a genuine fear of what happens when the informal sector shuts down, what happens when people go back to their villages, how do people deal with the loss of income, the absence of food during this period. And that is where the results of 9 years of better governance actually showed up. We were able to undertake the biggest food distribution effort in the history of the world. That for 2.5 years, I mean, till the end of last year, actually, the Indian system, the Indian government, was able to give food to 800 million people. Was able to give food free to 800 million people. Was able to put money in the bank accounts of 400 million people. And all this would not have been possible had the changes which enabled them not already happened. That because people were encouraged to get their Aadhaar number, because people were told, go open your bank accounts, because people were told, get digital, use your phone, to link up with the real world. It is actually, for those of you who may not have been to India in the last 3 years, the biggest change which has happened in the last 3 years is the faster digitalization of India. That so much more today was done because it could be done on a digital platform. In fact, even the vaccination, we would not have been able to get that coverage so systematically with no disruption had it not been for the fact that it was riding on a digital system. Now, the digital system is not just meant for emergencies. It is also meant to improve daily governance. And that too, we are seeing today. That at this time, we are constructing a social safety system in India, a social welfare program in India, which envisages people getting easy health access with the coverage, with the affordability for it, which promotes people getting pensions, which supports funding from government for people to build their own houses, which actually has enabled farmers by the millions, by the tens of millions, to get support for their crop on a rotational basis. And where you read about schemes like they replaced firewood with cooking gas, or they've connected up houses with the power lines, or right now what is the big change happening, which is to connect up houses with clean tap water. Now all this is happening because at the end of the day, there is the ability to deliver without leakage, without what leaves Delhi not reaching beneficiaries. And that is an enormous governance change, which has today truly transformed India. That's one part of what is happening. There's so much more that I think it's important you people should know. Again, a common complaint, which any of us who lived abroad and we came back to India, we would first make a infrastructure comparison. I came from this country, I transited that country, and by the time I reached India, look at the state of the roads, look at the railways, how long did I have to wait, see the airports. Today, it's not just the scale and number of infrastructure projects which are taking place. It is the fact that for the first time under the Gati Shakti program, they're actually being done in an integrated manner. That because again, one of our problems was different departments or different domains would do their own thing, sometimes at cross purposes with each other. Now, the fact that entire government of India is kind of working in a way, in a coordinated way for, you can say, a kind of master plan, that is making a huge difference in the state of infrastructure. Something similar is happening when it comes to human resources. You know, this budget which was just presented has envisages doubling of our nursing schools. When we look today, even at the last 8 years, at the number of new medical institutions, engineering institutions, IT institutions, broadly speaking, you could say what was the situation between 1947 and 2014. Today, you know, you would see increases somewhere between 50% to 100% of what was the achievement of the previous 10 years. It will naturally vary by domain. And so the picture I present to you is really an India today, which is where the rate of the pace of change has picked up, where there's a very strong determination that the next 25 years, the years we see as an Amrit Kaal, these are years which will move us towards being a developed economy, that we will become much more, I would say, central to what is happening in the world. Certainly, our presence in the world, our contribution to the world will be very much more in the coming years. And in many ways, I hear this not from Indians in India. I hear this actually as foreign minister when I travel out. You know, I was in New York last September. We have this every September. All the countries gather. Often Prime Minister heads our delegation. He did not go, so I was representing India. I actually had foreign ministers of other countries wanting to do a function in New York in the middle of all that UN hangama which was going on, because they said we need some forum to say thank you for the fact that you sent us vaccines. That's the kind of sense. I mean, many of you would have seen in your TV sets in the last 2 weeks what's been happening in Turkey and Syria. The fact was, within 24 hours of the Turkey earthquake, we were actually able to get a plane in. We were able to get a plane in, first with a rescue team. We were able to very rapidly set up a hospital, field hospital there. If there's on Twitter, for those of you who have the time and inclination, there's a very interesting, I think it's a TRT video? There's a Turkish video. It's a Turkish video of an Indian hospital operating in a school. You know, they made it into a makeshift facility. Do watch it. And, you know, as Indians or people of Indian origin across the world, I think we should look at this and then try and understand, you know, what has changed today in our country. Even where Fiji was concerned, you know, some years ago, I think you had a tropical cyclone called Yasa. Now, at that time, we did what we could. You know, we sent supplies. We tried to be of help. Even today, I think some of our supported programs are trying to deal with the consequences of Yasa. Even during COVID, you know, we made sure that small countries who would normally have not figured in other people's calculation, would have therefore been left behind, in the agenda. They were remembered, they were cared for. And that's something which we are again trying to do with the G20 presidency. As you all know, this year we hold the chair of the G20, and we genuinely want our presidency to make a difference. And we want that to make a difference not through political headlines. What we are interested is, ask around the world, what is it that is missing? Which part of your concern did not get on the table? How do we voice that? How do we bring the agenda to the right consensus? And why we are doing it internationally is because we are doing it domestically. That if you look at India's foreign policy today, and I say this as someone who's finished 45 years in the business, what for me has changed in foreign policy is today foreign policy is beginning to reflect a lot of the deep socio-economic concerns we have in India. Just like we are transforming the world within the country, we want to also transform the world outside. We know that, it's not something any country can do alone. Certainly, we cannot at our stage of development. We therefore are looking at partners. We are working with other countries. So that's really, in a sense, a caring but pragmatic, a realistic, but at the same time, a very helpful view of the world. And I think you will see a lot of that today applied to the relationship with Fiji. So what I can promise you as people who live here, that this relationship will certainly grow in the coming years. It will get full attention. We will look for ways and means of intensifying our cooperation, of finding ways of helping, the community here. Because for us, again, Indians abroad are both a source of strength and a matter of pride. Part of the reason why we take such extraordinary pains during COVID through the Vande Bharat mission, or you saw in Ukraine during Operation Ganga, that we feel today India must look after its people or people of Indian origin to the best of its ability. And our abilities have grown. So this too will grow in the coming years. So once again, I thank the High Commissioner for inviting all of you. It's a real pleasure to see or meet all of you. I again want to say that it's for me been a very, very pleasant experience. And certainly when I leave tomorrow, a very happy memory of coming here. I hope to come back, perhaps meet some of you in more easy circumstances. But it's truly been a great pleasure. Thank you. Jai Hind.